Now, Dick, you've been prominent in the dance world through your teaching as well as your performance. So what was your first contact with teaching, and in what schools you've been involved?
Well, as I said earlier, when I finished with the Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, and I was feeling my age was going to be a handicap, to show you what I mean by that, when I did bittersweet with Jeanette MacDonald, I was the only person in the chorus who knew who she was. That made me quite surprised, because they hadn't come out with the video tapes of her, and television had not done a number of her early movies. But anyway, I opened a school in Greenwich Village, and it's called the Greenwich Village Studio of Dance, on 6th Avenue, and I did that for a long time. I had the school for 6 years. And
that was part of where you had this early company that you were Dance Originals?
Yes, that's where I had the early company. And I was very generous. Again, I don't even think I was generous, I just did it. A lot of choreographers who give me credit for helping them in their early days by giving them spaces to rehearse. To me, it was just a matter that the studio was available. You know, it wasn't in use, so come on in and use it. Well, of course, if you go to pay for a practice rehearsal studio today, you're going to cost you an arm and a leg. I really didn't realize that, but I haven't even had mentioned in the New York Times about one of the choreographers who gave me credit for helping them out. And so while I was doing that, my school was not making enough money, and so I tried to. I got a job teaching also up in the Bronx, and I was teaching. I taught up there 7 years, 6 years, and it's overlapped. I would finish up there and come back and teach in the village, and so in my resume I say I had 6 years in the Greenwich Village Studio of Dance and 7 years up in the Bronx. Most of that was overlapping.
There's simultaneous.
Yeah. Now, strange enough, one of the students, she was 5 years old when I started teaching her. She is now 51, and we're still friends. We have never really lost contact with her. And finally, I had to literally, almost physically, kick her out of the school and say, "You've got to go someplace else." Now, this is already out of college type thing. So she went into New York. I was from
just
Brooklyn.
to make sure that she would have other influence and be exposed to other styles.
And she was in 42nd Street, and she was in a play called Ari, which was a musical version of Exodus. And she had a good part in both. They had seen her out. She was a really incredible, beautiful dancer. And now she's an accountant, and happens to be my accountant now, and I can't think of someone who would be more protective than she is. But when I was in the Bronx, one day I was taking class, and I heard this lady talking about wanting to sell her school. It was in Brooklyn. And so I said, "Where is it located?" Well, I happened to have been choreographing a show in Brooklyn at the time. And so I said, "Can I make an appointment? I'll come out and see it." Well, I went out and I fell in love with the place, absolutely in love with the place. And I didn't have any money, not enough money to buy a school. So I borrowed money from my cousin, I borrowed it from my friends, and I got enough money to buy the studio. And then the following year, when the season ended in June, by September I started her school. And the very first day, 75 people enrolled into the school. That was the very first day. And in the 6 months I was there, not only did I pay back all the money, but I also got an apartment and furnished it from scratch, because I didn't have really any furniture.
And you only owned the school for 6 months?
6 months, that's how successful it was.
I see. Well, whatever possessed you then to not continue that?
Well, that's the saddest part about it, is that I can almost equate the day it happened when Martin Luther King was killed. the neighborhood in which I was 99.9% Jewish clientele, suddenly the exodus out of Brooklyn to the suburbs, nothing had happened like that since they left Egypt. And which was all right with me. I began to get all sorts of people enrolled in the school who were from an ethnic background, and it really made me a difference as long as it was there. But I can remember when the first gate went up on, this was located on Flatbush and Church right across from Erasmus High School. The first gate went up, and then people began to be afraid to come out at night. Well, I had to stop teaching the evening class, and that was a cut on the income. And then I found myself teaching a lot of Spanish-speaking people and French. I had a large group of Haitians, and unfortunately, I couldn't communicate. I couldn't communicate on a business level. In class, I had no problem, but on a business level, you know, this is going to cost so much, and this is costumes are here, and we're going to perform there. It was a battle royal, and even after a while, the neighborhood became so bad. From really an upper middle class neighborhood, in the 14 years, it dropped down to a place where you did not want to walk on the street. So the mothers wanted them home before dark. Well, it gets dark at 5 o'clock. You don't get out of school until 3:30. Not very much time in which to make the rent. So I figured that I would try to sell the studio and either relocate or maybe find a job myself. So I put an ad in Dance Magazine, not mentioning my name, but dance professor looking for employment, also in the same magazine, dance studio for sale. And I got, I would think, 12 responses from the ad as becoming a teacher. Some of them were rather strange, like, well, we'll give you room and board and da-da-da, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted a real job. And then there were some places where when I quoted the price I wanted, they thought it was too much. But I didn't give up. I didn't give up. And I got a letter from Israel, who had seen the ad, and they wrote me they were looking for a ballet master. And I was very cautious about this. I happened to have had 2 friends who were affiliated with this company in Israel. So I wrote them letters, trying to find out what I could. And I wrote them back, giving them a definition of what I thought a ballet master was, as opposed to just a ballet teacher. And weeks went by without hearing from them, and I just sort of dismissed it from my mind. And one Sunday, I get a call, and they're in town, and they wanted to meet with me the next day. And this is sort of out of nowhere, and I made an appointment to meet them at Rumpelmeyer's at St. Regis Hotel. Or St. Moritz, I guess it is.
Yes, so on Central Park South, that's right.
So anyway, I met them the next day, and I had the director, the producer, or really the finance came from the Rothschilds, and the Baroness de Rothschild was there.
So this is Israeli Ballet Company.
This was called That Door Company. And then the business manager, and the 3 of us were there, and we talked for about 2 hours. And I had to laugh because Jeanette, the director, said, do you think that you could survive in Israel? And Miss Sheva de Rothschild said, if he can live on Flatbush Avenue, he can live in Israel.
I see.
So with that...
No more shrapnel in either place.
That's right. So anyway, I said, I don't know, when do you want a decision? They spoke right away. And this has hit me because I had totally given up hope ever hearing from them. And so they said, I'll tell you what, meet us back here in 2 hours, and we'll discuss it. So I went to a movie on 57th Street. I have no idea what the movie was about, or who was in it, or anything about it. And I was sitting there thinking, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. So I I had prepared to go back to the hotel and leave a note saying, thank you for your time, but I had decided not to do it. And then I said, no, you're a big boy. You can go face them face to face and say the same thing. Well, when I went back, they met me in the lobby, and they said, we have decided, not I, but we have decided to invite you over as our guest, and we will watch you teach, and you will find out if you like us, and we will find out if you like me. And I thought, a free trip to...
So they funded your audition?
Oh yeah, totally. I stayed in one of the best hotels in Israel while I was there, and with the per diem and the whole bit. When I went to Israel, and I had told my students that I was going, well, they were very disappointed, but on a Saturday, one of my little young boys, I guess he was about 12 or something, came in, he was so happy. And I said, well, what's going? He says, Israel has been bombed.
Sure.
And I said, what? And it was the Yom Kippur War. And so I kept waiting, and we had already planned the time I was to leave and everything. And I get a call from Israel, and they said, when are you coming? And I said, I'm not coming unless there's a round-trip ticket. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go over there and get stuck in Israel when there's a war going on. So they said, there will be a ticket for you at El Al tomorrow.
What was this boy's delight?
Oh, because I wasn't going to leave.
Because you weren't going to go.
I
see. He didn't want to lose you. He wasn't thrilled about Israel. Oh, all right. Fine.
So
I understand that.
Anyway, I went to Israel, and before I left, I called the State Department. I said, are planes still flying in and out of Israel? And they said, yes. Why do you want to go? And I told the lady on the phone exactly why I was going. And she says, I think you're crazy. Mm. And I said, well, I may be, but I still want to go. And she said, well, don't you leave this country until you talk to me again. So I called them the day I was to leave. And they said, the planes are still flying in and out. But if you want to go, we can't stop you. And so I went ahead. And while I was in the air, there was a ceasefire. Mm-hmm. But when we got to the airport in Paris, the plane was surrounded by machine gun people. And they taxied down the runway because there was that kind of fear of something that happened to the airplane. And I got to Israel. I was going to stay 1 week. I stayed 2 weeks instead. The war was still basically going on. And one of the things that cinched the deal for me, from a personal point of view, is that I would go into the dressing room, and there would be this machine gun lying on the bench with the combat boots there. These people would come from the front line to take ballet class.
Oh my word, what dedication.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And one guy would come every other day, and I said, why do you only come every other day? And he's on a fighter pilot, and I fly one day and I do not fly the next. So the days that he did not fly, in a war, he would come and take ballet class. Well, this is impressive to a person who's in love with the art they're working on. So that sort of cinched it for me. I said, yes, I would stay.
And you were there how long?
Well, that was a 2-week stay.
Well, I mean, but was that only those 2 weeks? Did you go back for an extended period?
Well, I had to come back and get rid of my school and prepare everything, and get rid of my apartment and what have you. So I came back, and I got back in time for Thanksgiving dinner. I remember that. But by New Year's Eve, I celebrated New Year's Eve in Israel. Mm-hmm. So it was just a matter of that month and a half. So. Yeah. Which was a great change.
And your stay there was how long?
I stayed there a year.
A full year.
But we did tour in Europe, so there was that time. And I got a 4-week vacation in which I got a chance to visit my family in Greece, and I had a chance to go through Europe all by myself, because when we finished, we danced at the Edinburgh Festival, then we danced at Sadler Wells, and then we had time off. Then my vacation time started, so I went off on my own. Mm-hmm. One thing about traveling with an Israeli company is, even though they all speak English perfectly, they're only going to speak Hebrew. Just to irritate. I always think it's to irritate. But it would not have been a very pleasant thing to travel with.